Hello, my name is Max Banfield. Welcome to my talk. Today I will be discussing copyright law. What I learnt in general terms when I was at school, what I learned from lecturers and examiners when I was at the Institute of Technology, and why I began doing my own medical research at the age of 25, and how countless people have come along since, started using my research findings and acting as if they did the research and as if they are entitled to all of the credit and all the profits that have derived from it. So let me begin by saying that if you are starting out as a student, it will be an advantage to you to know what happened to me. And you can either do something about it in regard to my situation, you can make sure it doesn't happen to yourself. Now, when I was at school, we learnt copying another person's work during an exam, e.g. looking over someone else's shoulder, was called cheating. We learnt more generally that if you copied something from a textbook and presented it as homework, and you were caught by the teacher who recognised where it was from, then you'd also be punished for cheating. You'd possibly be admonished. They might write a letter to your parents, or they might give you an automatic fail for your exam. And we also, as teenagers at school, would occasionally go to the movies on the weekends. And you'd see on the big screen movies by MGM and other companies, and they'd have credits, for instance, who were the stars in the movie. And at the end, who was the author of the story, who wrote the film script, who produced the music, who was the producer, the cameraman, and the cameo, the actors who played the cameo roles, and who did the editing. And there were copyright symbols. And you would see in the newspapers that it's something like a box office success, and that the actors have been paid millions of dollars, the company's made many millions in profits, and it's regarded as sort of a great business success, the movie business. And nobody complained about it, because we'd leave school. Say you're 14, you didn't like school, you go get an apprenticeship to get money. You're not going to make a lot. If you stayed at school, you could expect to leave in about the leaving certificate level and get a job as maybe a clerk in an office. And that'd be slightly more income. Nobody complained about it. You just try harder to get to that level. You might go on to matric, be invited to university, as I was. And you may actually go to university, get a degree, and then if you get a job, you're in a higher bracket again of income. Nobody complained. We knew that if you went into research and you developed a chemical formula that could cure diseases, you could set up a company and become a billionaire. And nobody complained about that. That's the way your life is understood and set out. And you start with those expectations. We also knew that people would steal. It was an easy way to make money. And the general view was, with most people, if you comply with the law and get educated and get a job, it's a safe and best way to go about things. If you steal, you might make a lot of money quick. You steal somebody's property worth $100,000. Took them 30 years to develop. You can steal it in 5 minutes. But if you get caught, you're in trouble. So most people thought it's best to be law-abiding citizens, as I did. Now, with respect to movies, we also knew that some individuals who we knew directly or indirectly would go into the movie theatre, maybe with a camera, and take a copy of that movie and sell it to their friends for $10 each. They make a couple $100 in a week. It only take them 2 hours to make the movie, but the actual movie itself might have involved thousands of people and taken over a year to make and cost millions of dollars. The people who make it run the risk. If it doesn't sell at the box office, they've lost their money. But if it succeeds, they can make a lot of money. And the reason most people don't do it is too difficult. They don't want to take the risk. They just work 9 to 5 as a clerk, or they get a job as a, say maybe a plumber or as a professional person. Nobody complains because the opportunity is there for everybody. And people have the ambition. If you want, for example, to become a movie star, somebody puts up a movie and says, we're looking for actors, there'll be a queue a mile long, people who want to go along and be part of the movie. If you want to get a job, there might be 10 or 12 people apply for it. Things are popular because of their fame, popularity, or the amount of money to be derived. Everybody knew that. So we all had choices. Now, when I went to the Institute of Technology, I was fortunate enough to be offered 3 scholarships, and I accepted one. When I was at the Institute of Technology, we were told in direct terms, in lectures, that cheating was frowned upon, that you need to do original work, and that if you're caught, it would have serious consequences. The lecturers were advised not to copy work from your manuscripts and claim it to be their own, and the administrators of the education, the upper level education sector, would say they had high levels of ethical standards, and if they caught anyone cheating, they would be punished harshly. It was not tolerated, and everyone accepted that. You'd get the occasional cheat. You'd hear stories about people bribing the professor so that you'd pass your exam and so forth. But most people didn't do that. You either succeeded or you failed. And in general terms, there wasn't much you could do about it, except do your best and pass the exams the correct way. So that was my founding. That was my background. And that was my understanding in copyright law. So many years after that, I became ill, and I thought, as my health deteriorated and there was no apparent understanding of that problem or cure, I'd better do my own research. And you probably don't know my name, but you know the products of my research. I invented a method of treating chronic fatigue syndrome, which other people now use, and they call it pacing. They got all sorts of awards and medals for it. I also invented the world's first standing computer desk, and now they're selling in the millions. And there are people who claim that they did the research, that they invented it, and that they're making billions of dollars profit, when in fact they didn't do the research, they didn't invent it, they're just making the profit from my products. So how did that happen? Well, in the process of finding out who and how that happened, I needed to have a look at copyright law. And under that law, a person who writes something down on paper doesn't need to put copyright on it. They just need to establish that they did the work and that it first to do it. And I thought, that's okay. That's what I've done. My ideas have been published. That's the reason I had them published. I could have just left the ideas as mine and not published them. It's quite difficult to write, for me, to write 3-page essays every few months. But having it down on paper, that's proof in writing. Not just in writing, but proof in a publication that I did the research. And it's undisputable. The next thing that it says is that you can take out, or you can indicate on the articles that you have copyright, or you put a publication, especially if you do it yourself, especially if you write your own books, to get an ISB number to register the number of the book. You deposit them a free copy in state and federal libraries, and that's further proof that you've done the research. And also you place copyright symbols for each of those books to make it clear that you have written it, put a lot of time and effort into it, that it is your right to require acknowledgement and fees for it. And everybody knows that. So if someone comes along later and writes the same type of thing, even with different words, it's a breach of copyright. And if anyone designs anything that you've designed, makes minor modifications to it, they're exploiting your research by not paying royalties. And the reason they make the minor modifications is a devious way of trying to create a false impression that they've done something new or different, when in fact they've added something so trivial that it doesn't make any difference. In fact, generally makes that product's function worse. So the fact that people make something out of plastic instead of wood, or they make it slightly different size, doesn't make it different. It's still a breach of copyright. So those were the procedures that I adopted, and I took them to the full. I published them, I put them on paper, I had them in widely spread. I sold books throughout libraries, and I had copyright, all rights reserved on those books. Now, under copyright law, which I had to investigate, given that lawyers weren't particularly helpful, I found that in the 19th century, printing presses were producing books in the millions, but they didn't write the books. So they're making a lot of money from each book, becoming wealthy. And because of that, the authors who wrote the books were not making any profit, and in extreme cases were going mad and committing suicide because of the poverty and seeing other people benefit from it. So some of those people included Mark Twain and Jules Verne, etc., who you recognise as famous authors. And they protested about these printers, greedy people who did nothing, manufacturing their books that took maybe a decade to write, and talent, being made by printers in the millions, by people, the printers, who weren't good enough to write stories or articles that were worth writing, and weren't capable of producing products of that quality. But everyone recognised that if they're a printer and they make $1 million of an author's books, they deserve to make money because of the time involved in manufacturing. And all they have to do is pay the author 5% for each book. The printer gets rich, and so does the author. And in general terms, the author makes the most because he put it's without his product, the printer would be on the unemployed queue. He wouldn't have anything to do. You can't profit from it. So that's why printing companies who were thieves stole the best books from the best authors, because they wanted to make money without going to all that trouble. So people like Mark Twain and Jules Verne and many others got together, and in their protests they demanded that the law be changed, that copyright law be strengthened, because printing press managers were basically, in England, were basically translating top-selling books in Europe into English and selling them. And they did, in other words, they didn't make any change, they just changed the language. And that's still copyright theft, and it's obvious theft. And they were depicted in an illustration in Puck as overweight, greedy, selfish, evil men stamping their foot on a book called Law. In other words, that's according to law, they can publish millions of books and tell the authors, like Jules Verne and Mark Twain, to get stuffed. And so that's why Verne and Twain and others said, no, we've got to stop these parasites, these thieves, from stealing everything, from being greedy and selfish. And so at the Berne Convention, the law was determined to reward the original author in the following ways. 1, you must acknowledge the author's name whenever you do anything with their product, and not pretend that you were the author, and not pretend that you have a right to print it without the author's permission, and not to pretend that it's in the public domain so it doesn't matter. It is illegal to pretend that you've got the right to manufacture it, and you can be prosecuted for that. And in consequence of that, any printer who wants to manufacture 1 million of someone else's book has to ask them permission, which is the polite and ethical thing and legal thing to do. And not just do it because they want to make money quick, behind the author's back. And then, so that's the second one. And then the third requirement is if you're going to make profit from it, you've got to pay that author a royalty. And as a general rule, it's 5% of the wholesale or retail price. And then everyone's happy. The author can go back to producing more books, and the printer can go on with the job of making himself rich by printing them. So that was my understanding of the copyright law. And that was the law as I found it in recent years. And if that was the case, and if that was on it, I'd be one of the world's wealthiest men. So why aren't I? Well, let me give you some examples of people who have made a few minor changes to my words and said it's their idea. For example, I developed a method of treating chronic fatigue with exercise and energy management. People change the words and say, oh, let's call it pacing, and say we invented it. Well, calling my method pacing doesn't mean it's their method. And that's all they did. And essentially, the old method of treating chronic fatigue was to tell people to run faster and faster to get fit. I found that didn't help and made things worse. So I basically, and I'm not going to go into details for the copyright thieves to steal, I basically did things in my own way, in my own time. And they come along and say, that's pacing. We thought of it with our colleagues. They didn't think of it. It didn't exist before I invented it. And all previous methods of exercise either failed or didn't get anywhere, so they were abandoned. And that's for more than 100 years. Now, my method is in use all around the world. So they called it pacing and then said, oh, we're not just someone who just said run slow, which is ridiculous. We developed energy management methods throughout the day as well. Well, in fact, they didn't, because that was part of my theory anyway. So they're trying to say that they've got an idea and they've improved upon it in the last 20 years, when in fact they didn't get the idea. They haven't improved it. They've just copied me. And they're getting all sorts of awards and prizes and parading about as if they care about patients, when in fact I'm the patient who invented the method, because nobody else could. The next idea that I developed was the standing computer desk. It took me 23 years. People come along, and what do? Well, this is what I did. I found, like everyone else, that standing desks don't help. They'd been for 100 years. Nobody made them, nobody sold them, nobody bought them. They were a rarity. But what I did was I added a 6-inch high bench one year and a 6-inch high bench on top of that a few years later, and then a keyboard tray on top of that. And I experimented with positions. I read medical research journals to find out the effect on health, which no one else knew. I had to work it out myself and develop that desk. It's a very complicated process. It took me 23 years and I had no idea whether I'd succeed or not, which is why no one else succeeded. They started and a week later they gave up, or a year later they gave up. I was in pain and I had to solve the problem, which is why I continued for 23 years. And because of the accuracy of my understanding and research, I finally got it right. Then people come along and what do? Well, the first thing they do is they copy it, peer review it, say, it's correct. Before that, they telling me I was wrong. They were ridiculing me, telling me it was wrong for 20 years. And when they peer reviewed it and found out it's correct, they said, we've discovered it. They didn't discover anything. They peer reviewed what I did. And because they've peer reviewed it, they're claiming that they did the research. Well, finding out that someone else got it right and then copying it is not research. They're kidding themselves, and more importantly, they're trying to kid the public. They did nothing except criticise me, and when I got it right, they stole it. Maybe they're too embarrassed to admit they couldn't solve the problem. So they copy it. And then they try to make themselves look intelligent by making it height adjustable. And say it's different. Well, it isn't. The standing desk that I designed wasn't designed to be 5 foot high or 6 foot high. It was designed, determined based on the person's height. So if you're 5 foot tall, you'll need a different size desk to someone who's 6 foot tall, according to my theory. So they make it height adjustable and say we do this to enable movement from sitting to standing. Sounds good, doesn't it? But that's not why they're doing it. That's what they're telling you. They're doing it because different people of different heights will need a different height desk. But what they're telling you is they're doing it because it enables you to move from sitting to standing. Well, I do that all the time. I've been doing that for 30 years. They've been stealing from me since 1999. I've been sitting and standing and moving because I wrote the theory. And obviously, if you're sitting all day, it makes you sick. And then you start standing all day, that's just as bad. So you need to alternate between the two, and that's part of my theory. But they reckon they've discovered it. And that I don't want to go into too many details because they'll steal it and say, we thought of it. I'm just telling you the reason that they're making those desk height adjustable is because people have different height. And the reason they say it enables from moving to standing to sitting is to make it look as though they've done something intelligent. And also, you know what they do then? They stick a treadmill under it and then wax lyrical and act as if they've done something remarkably brilliant. Treadmills have been around for years. What they're doing is saying we're different. We've made advances in our knowledge. We invented a standing desk and we put a treadmill under it and we put a timer on it. Those are all things straight from my book. But I didn't put a treadmill under it. You know why? I'm not going to tell you why. But the people who are doing that are just trying to make themselves look different and trying to make their design look complicated so that they can get some sort of award and have something to talk about, apart from the fact that they say, we stole it from Max Banfield. No, they got a lot of reasons. The old desks had things on them like inkwells and slots for pens and leather tops. So what are they doing now? Nothing more than they've always done, except they're doing these minor, trivial amendments to standing desks. Who made the change? I did. What are they doing? They're making some out of plastic and some out of wood. They're making some square and some round and some curved. They're not doing the research work. The creative, groundbreaking, game-changing research was done by me. Instead of making 10,000 desks that people sit at, they're making 5,000 that they sit at and 5,000 that they stand at. And they're getting all sorts of design awards because of this change. Well, I'm the person for the change. All they're doing now is what they've always done, designing desks. Instead of designing sitting desks, they're designing standing desks. Some of them are height adjustable with pneumatics, others with wind-up mechanisms that you can get off Eagle's clothesline. And they're even running competition for school children to see who can design the best type of standing desk in the class in a week. These changes are not research. They are important, and if designers want to design desks on the basis of my research, they should be paying me 5% royalty. Then they're doing their job. And if furniture companies want to make them, they're welcome to. Just pay me 5% royalties, give me the credit, and don't make the false claim that they invented it. So that's what they're doing. They're making changes. Putting timers on them. You've got a watch. Why need a timer? You put a treadmill under it? Just go for a walk for coffee or something. You need all sorts of things that they're doing. The changes are trivial. And I've seen things that they're doing to those desks that are making it more likely that desk workers will get health problems. But I'm not going to say how, because they'll steal it and everyone will be grateful to them for their supposed wisdom. So if the furniture companies stuck to their task of manufacturing desks in the millions, I wouldn't object if they paid me 5% royalty for each desk. But under the circumstance, I am objecting because they're not paying me. And they're pretending or faking or fraudulently claiming that they did the research and developed it. The other thing is, over a 23-year period, I added a 6-inch high bench, another 6-inch high bench, a keyboard tray, and I rearranged my desk, and I changed things all the time. And so what are they doing? In 2 hours, they get a student from uni to design a desktop. And what is it an exact copy of? My benches. So instead of having a 6-inch high bench, another on top, and another on top with a computer pushed back, they get a lever mechanism. And it's spacious enough for the computer to rise from desk level to 6 to 18 inches high above the desk, with adjustable for the screen to be moved back to reach the position that I recommended. They're not doing the research. They haven't done anything that's game-changingly creative. I did that. They can be told by the lecturer, look, design a desk like this, and they just do it. If I didn't write the theory, they wouldn't be doing it. They'd be making sitting desks, and they're putting different size inkwells or different size slots in it for their biros or different size slots in it for their computers. They wouldn't be doing it the way I said, but they're all doing it according to my design. So 10,000 or 5,000 different designers make 5,000 variations of my idea and claim that they're all creatively brilliant. I made the game-changing, revolutionary new design, and they should be getting awards for the designs. but acknowledging that it's due to my research. And the best of them should get their awards, but it's the Banfield desk that they're designing or redesigning, and it's all based on my research. That's a derivative of my research, and consequently, I should be being paid royalties. So what happened when I found all these people making tens of thousands of desks, selling them in bulk to businesses, claiming they can reduce the health problems and increase the productivity of workers, running lectures on the health benefits as part of their sales pitch. They're making my desk and selling it on the basis of my research and calling it an education program, calling themselves ergonomics consultants. Sounds good, except they didn't do any of that. They're just copying me. So they're getting awards and making billions of dollars profit and calling themselves world's leading authority for manufacturing the desks. And they're getting awards for the education that they're giving to people, which is based on all my research, and they're getting awards for desktops, which is a copy of the additions that I made to my desk, and they're getting awards for all sorts of things. And they're rearranging offices according to my design principles, which was we weren't designed to sit at desks all day as humans. That's what's causing the problems. We were designed to be moving and running and stopping and sitting and standing throughout the jungle. That's natural. To sit in a desk all day, that's my theory. And they're even saying that is part of their education program. And they're working in teams, going into businesses, and businesses are buying 5,000 sets of desks. And the companies are making a lot of profit. And those desks didn't exist. The designers and the manufacturers wouldn't be doing anything at all, wouldn't be making any sales at all if it wasn't for my research. So what happened when I went to lawyers and so forth? And physios are now doing it. It's a physical method of treating disease previously regarded as mental disorders. So the physios are claiming they developed it with their colleagues in ergonomics so that they can get all the patients who previously referred to psychiatrists are now going to the physiotherapist. They want to get that custom from the medical profession, and so some of them are stealing my ideas, and every other physio is learning about it and thinks it's a physiotherapy device, therefore they invented it, therefore they got the right to give advice on it. And of course the government's reimbursing their fees every time they prescribe it for health reasons in office work. Well, government should be giving me 5% royalty before they get anything, because without me, they wouldn't be doing that. So what happened, I'll give you an example of what happened when I went to one particular meeting. They were talking about, a business administrator was talking about the marvellous new physiotherapist that she's got. And doing all sorts of things that no one has ever done the previous 20 years. And he's using my method. And at the break, in the discussion, the physiotherapists come around in the general walking throughout the meeting, and I went up to him and I said, "Did you know I invented that standing desk?" And he said to me, "Did you? That's brilliant. That is absolutely remarkable. That's helping a lot of people." And then I said, "Did you know I invented it under copyright? And that if you're going to be advising it, I have no objection, but you should be paying me 5% royalty each consultation, and I should be getting 5% royalty in each desk." And that physio, he turned his back on me. "Don't be bloody ridiculous. We work hard 9 to 5. And he walked away. "We're not giving you 5%, he said. In other words, when he found out that I invented it, he said, "That's brilliant." But when I wanted 5% of his fee, he wanted nothing to do with it. So they know that they're taking from me. And they keep on taking from me. And do you know what? If it wasn't for my research, he'd probably be unemployed. There's a lot of new physiotherapists out there, and the only reason they're working now is because of me. they'd be getting nothing. With me, they get 95% and pay me 5%, 100%. But they want the whole lot. They're greedy. They did nothing about this research. Some of them are pretending they did the research, and the others are going along with it because of all the money they're making and of all the new clients are getting walking into their clinics. No such thing existed before. And they're doing that to several of my theories on the physical causes of disease were briefly considered to be psychological. The woman in charge of the meeting came past and I said to her, do you know that physiotherapist didn't know anything about this until I wrote the theory and that he should be paying me royalties? And she pushed me aside and moved past. She values that physiotherapy because he's a member of her organisation, and she values him because he's actually he's actually helping her. Without me, he wouldn't be helping her and she wouldn't be getting the benefits and telling everyone how wonderful it was. And then a politician was at the meeting, and this is another woman. No offence, but she was overweight. And she come past, and I said to her, I've been interested in this meeting today because I've been discussing physiotherapy and standing desks, and it's my intellectual property, and I'm entitled to royalties on that. Would you like to talk to me about it? And she looked arrogant, pushed past me like a big whale, getting me out of the way. If I didn't move out of the way, she'd have pushed me out of the way. She said, go see my assistant, make an appointment. And she made it clear from her tone of voice, she wasn't going to do anything at all about it. She was happy that the physios were making the money and the businesses were getting the benefit. She didn't want me to have anything to do with it. So naturally, I'm not going to waste my time contacting a politician like that. She's just a waste of space. But she pretends to be respectable when she's out trying to get votes. And then I spoke to another politician, and he said he didn't have time to calculate the cost savings. He didn't have an accountant in the office. You get an Australian population of 20-odd million, and the number of people involved is 5%. 10% of 10% of 20 million is 2 million. 5% is 1 million. 1 million Australians are going to benefit from it, and the cost savings to the health sector is $1,000 per patient per year. He said he couldn't calculate it, but the politicians have changed the occupational health and safety laws to reimburse the fees of doctors who gave up trying to solve the problems and physiotherapists who never even tried. So they're getting all the benefits. The government's got reduced healthcare costs, the insurance industry's got reduced healthcare costs, the doctors are charging fees, the physios are charging fees, the patients are benefit, the furniture companies are making money, and I'm getting nothing. So that's what happened to me. You're going into research, you're going into inventing, because the government said it's a good idea to be creative. They're encouraging creativity. You hear it all day, every day. But that's what happened to me. That's what happens to a lot of people. They say, oh, big companies can always steal from little companies and there's nothing you can do about it. And they say, lots of people with strings of letters after their name can steal the ideas of the common man. They're saying, I'm the common man. And strings of letters after their name, academics, they're supposed to have ethics. They're supposed to be the last of the people I'd expect to steal from me. But they're out there in the university teaching my ideas and say they got the idea from ergonomics professors in America. And they didn't. So those are the things that happened to me. And what happened when I went to a lawyer? I said to one lawyer, I've got all the proof in the world that I did this stuff. And I'd like you to back me against the several furniture companies who I know are making these desks and not paying me. And the lawyer, at the end of the meeting, I said, on the way out, I said, so will you be considering supporting me? And I looked at him and he said, no! He made it perfectly clear he wasn't going to help me, and that if I dared to claim copyright, some bad things had happened to me. And he said did you know you better watch out for the defamation laws before you accuse these large companies of stealing from you? So he's supporting the copyright thieves trying to intimidate me into being silent about it. So then there's another lawyer, and they all sound as if they can be helpful at the outset. And one of them said, "Oh, I should have taken out a patent. He can't help me. Like another lawyer said, I was stupid for not taking out a patent. The thieves are stupid for not doing their own research, and he says I'm stupid for not taking out a patent." And he says, you should have taken out copyright. You should have taken out patent law, a patent. And I said, before these furniture companies walk into the patent office door, they're stealing my copyright. And he said, I don't know about copyright law, I'm only a patent law. So the lawyers say, I'm stupid because I didn't know about the law and all the complexities of it. And he's a patent law, and he says he doesn't know anything about copyright law. How's a guy who's been to university to learn about law not know something and expect me to know it when I'm not even a lawyer? And another lawyer said, have you got copyright? As if because he'd say, if I didn't, he'd say, well, you can't do anything. I said, yes, I have. And then 5 minutes later, he said, can't help me. I said, unless you've got proof of it. I said, I've got a 1,000-page book on it. I've got plenty of proof of it, and it's in libraries. And he said, you should have taken out a patent. In other words, they keep asking questions. Their intention at the start is to say, no, we're not going to do anything. And they just keep asking questions until I'm supposed to say no. But I just get yes, 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 and yes. And they just walk away. Because they can't get me to say no, because I've complied with every part of the law that's possible to comply with. And then I went to another lawyer, and he said that he couldn't help me because he's implied he's already taken out a patent for a furniture company who's stealing my research. And it's unethical for him to have two clients, at the same time. So for ethical reasons, he said he has to help the crook, not me. He didn't say it in those words, but that's what he meant. And he just basically said no and left me with no opportunity to continue the conversation. And he said he's got 8 standing desks down in the other room where his staff work. So he's benefiting from my research, and he's not going to support me. And another lawyer said things along those lines. So all the lawyers that I approached started off thinking they'd be able to support me until they found out the details, and then they acted quite forthrightly as if it's their job to protect the crooks and not me. Now, I'll leave it up to you as a member of the public to decide what's going on there. And also, as I said at the outset, what the copyright law was on when I was at school, what the copyright law was told to me when I was at the Institute of Technology, and what the copyright law and the intellectual properties laws were according to the Berne Convention, and what happened in my experience. So if you're going into research, and if you're relying on intellectual property protection, and if you think creativity is going to be respected and your efforts are going to be rewarded, think again. I don't think it'd matter if you took out copyright, if you published 100 books, and if you took out patents, they'd find a way of stealing from you. You might like to think about that and do something about it. Anyway, that's what's happened. I could go into a lot more detail, but this is a general overview for you to think about if you're just starting out in the research business. Thank you.